Hey there, welcome to the Drawing Codex. In this video, what I want to discuss is a simple topic or question. Can you take the Loomis method and use it to help you draw manga? Now, the Loomis method is this idea of breaking down the face and the whole figure, and there's a lot more to it than often is described in YouTube tutorials that you might have seen. But in this case, I want to just talk about the basic concept of the face and whether we can use this idea to help us draw manga in all its variety and different types of style. Let's jump in, get started. Alright, welcome to the Drawing Codex again. My name's Tim Mcburnie. I'm a professional working artist and I have been so for 20 years. I draw comics professionally and concept art for video games and animation and movies, etc. This is an interesting concept, and I think a lot of people have asked this, and the answer is kind of yes and no. Yes, I think a lot of this structural drawing that sort of Loomis has talked about, and the book in general, is something that will help most artists no matter what structure or style or whatever you want to do. If you look at a lot of how to draw manga books, they have a very similar kind of concept to them. We're often, like blocking in the features and creating these kind of spheres and stuff like that. But what you'll find is that manga is often, let's get that a little bit more in focus, manga has a lot of iconography to it. It is much more about the features and the subtlety of the faces and making sure that we feel stuff through the characters. And it's not always the most structural in the way that it's applied, but it's very effective. It's often in many ways more effective at communicating emotion than a highly structural style. And the concept is, yes, you can use it, and yes, it will help, but you need to kind of mostly just focus on the primary forms and the blocking in a proportion that something like the Loomis method will give you, and then you kind of need to deviate from that a little bit more and deal with the idea of iconography and these sort of simpler, more graphic faces, where again the Loomis method will help us block in the angle of the face, which is again similar to how you'd see in most how to draw manga books, which I don't know how many of those are actually drawn by people who actually draw manga all day every day. Most of the professional manga artists are so busy drawing manga they don't have a lot of time to do teaching. But anyway, this is a simple concept, so let's jump in and look at how we actually do this. All right, for this demo, I'm going to be sketching in a sketchbook. It's this one. It's a Strathmore 400 series sketch paper, and I've got a matte Blackwing. I've got a Blackwing two-stage sharpener, which I'm going to sharpen just now. I've got a little sort of plastic skull that we can use to discuss some of these concepts, and this is obviously a copy of Naruto, which I quite like, and I think is very sort of effective and quite sort of structural, and despite being very sort of emotive, does have a lot of really good drawing and structural drawing to it. Just quickly, if you do want a few more tips on how to avoid the common mistakes that people normally make when they are drawing in the Loomis method or they're learning structural drawing, you can check out my free mini workshop and guide that goes over the top 5 head mistakes that aspiring artists tend to make and how to avoid them. It's free. The link will be in the description. All right, so the thing we really want to focus on the most is proportion, or placing features and these proportional markers. So if we look at a typical sort of manga face, what we're going to do is just modify the proportions that the Loomis method might have. Now, typically when we're drawing the Loomis method or a traditional kind of set of Western idealized proportions, what we're going to see is that, again, we divide that sphere that is part of the proportion, and we're kind of going to add dimensionality to that sphere. So we add dimensionality to the sphere, and that dimensionality helps us to place those features, right? And we sort of have some sort of eyes, right? We've got a nose, and we're going to have the rest of these things, right? So that's sort of what we're after, is where are these things? And again, we can kind of basically just add stylized features on top. That really is the trick, but the Loomis method will help you block it in. So normally we're after kind of 1, right, from the brow to the hairline is one proportion. From the brow to the nose is second proportion. And then we basically just duplicate that same proportion here. And this will give us, again, like a fairly sort of realistic looking face, which is not really what you always want for cartoony stuff, right? Often what we want is something that is a little bit more stylized. So if you just look at the typical sort of manga stylization, again, and I'm being sort of generic here, but this is just to make a point, right? Again, there's lots and lots of different types of manga. You know, you can have something like One Piece, you can have something like Akira, and you know that the stylistic variations are very sort of different and take influences from different places. You know, Otomo was very much influenced by Jean Giraud or Mobius. You know, took a lot of influence there. And, you know, you can see the art in One Piece is like very abstract. It's a mix of sort of, the drawing is in all of these things are excellent. You know, most popular manga has excellent drawing. It's just a matter of how structural it is and, you know, how much they're sort of interested in that. But it always has some sort of emotion. So what we need to do is, again, take the structure, which again is sort of something that helps us rotate, which is, you know, going to be relevant for all styles, and figure out how to kind of apply it to a more stylized look. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to sort of curve this line in a little bit to give us that sort of typical, you know, non sort of jutting jaw. I'm going to place in some indications for some sort of cheekbones. And again, we're going to have a nose kind of here. I'm going to make that kind of small. We're going to have some big sort of eyes. And again, this will look pretty weird at this point, right? But here I'm going to have, right? So that's given me the basic block in, right? And here I'm just going to block it in a little bit more, right? And then we got sort of an ear, right? So right. And this is going to give us something, you know, like pretty sort of, you know, meant to be sort of, again, similar to that sort of Naruto sort of style, right? We have that slightly kind of pushed in bottom jaw, right? Sort of big features. That's really what it's gonna do. But again, you can replicate that as much as you want. Now the next thing, obviously, you know, and we still have the hairline there. We've got this here, so you know, again, we can play around with, you know, if we want to sort of add structure. Again, I'm not going to draw sort of fan art or anything like that, but you know, if you wanted to sort of play around with those kind of ideas, right, we'd sort of add structure. And again, what we'd do is we'd use this sphere to help us place that, right? So the sphere, right, imagining and thinking about the sphere, right, and how like a headband might wrap across the sphere is going to help us there, right? And then again, I've got, you know, some sort of spiky hair, which again, I don't normally do for my sort of stylistic stuff, so it's a bit simple. Now, that really is what the Loomis method will give you. All I'm doing is I have applied the Loomis method, I've learnt it, and now what I'm doing is I'm saying, well, if I want to draw a character, you know, that has slightly different proportions, we just change those proportions there a little bit. And the next thing we're going to do is, instead of kind of thinking structure here, what we're going to do is really just start to kind of, you know, think about, you know, the iconic features that are going to be placed there, right? So you can kind of see that, you know, we're going to have, you know, in this case, again, you can kind of see like, you know, how many features are there. And this is where you can kind of play with it, right? Depends on the size, how big it is, whatever, right? But again, this is where you experiment, you come up with your own style. But the point here is that these things are iconic. So this nose isn't really based in structure. It's based in, you know, just what looks cool. And again, with the eyes, the way I would kind of do them is, again, I'm not really drawing a real proper sort of manga style with like crazy big, you know, eyes with a million reflections or anything like that. But again, what I'm going to do is sort of just focus on putting some iconic sort of eyes on there, and yeah, just use that to sort of, you know, place where those go. So I put those circles in there. You can see that kind of happened, and then, right, we can have some, you know, sort of emotive sort of eyes there, right, and eyebrows. And that basically is the trick. So we take the structure, we take the proportion, we control structure and proportion, and what we're doing is just adding our iconic, right, sort of features and things like that on top. And you play with the iconic features and you figure out which ones you like and focus really on just emotion. But this way you can rotate the character how you want and get them in the position that sort of works for you. And again, hopefully in that case, you'll get the best of both worlds. So anyway, just a quick one. Hopefully that helped you out. If you're interested in this or you got more questions, you want more demos on how to draw manga stuff and sort of combine it with structural drawing or Loomis Method stuff. Again, that's what I do. I draw comics all day. I'm drawing comics all day at the moment. And again, I don't draw specifically in the manga style, but again, I read a lot of manga when I was growing up and I really, really love it. And it's been a huge influence on my style. So anyway, let me know if you want some more of these. I'd be really, keen to make them if that's something you're interested in. Other than that, we'll catch you around. Happy drawing.